This is Anupam back again. Today, I'm going to talk about something which I think has been going on for many companies. They are preparing their SAP systems for S4 transformation, or it might be a new project, or just plain old support. What they need is, they have been running SAP for many decades now. The original implementation team is gone, and they may not have the documentation for changes or even to support or do the next transformation. So they reached out how they can have the SAP system work with their own coding guidelines and dev processes to with AI to generate some of this documentation, do the code review, and give them a kind of a quality rating of how ready is this for their next work. So that's what we are going to see. Let me quickly walk you through the solution. So here's what we are suggesting for such customers. Basically, Agentic-AI execution powered by USB for SAP, and it should combine their existing SAP with on an agile model to read the code repository as well as their development processes, which might be in technical specs, coding guidelines, standards, whatever they have, the checklist, etc. And it should make it simple for them to plug in with SAP, and it should, ideally should be certified, and then go ahead and create this documentation as well as quality documents. So the process would be pretty straightforward. First, do a discovery, which should be deep discovery of all their custom stuff. So most of the standard stuff that is supported by SAP, all the custom stuff should be the first priority. Do a deep discovery of all different object types, tables, views, reports, T-codes, enhancements, what have you. The next step comes where in the define phase, we have the customer defined technical specs, coding guidelines. That's their dev process, right? And we would want to align to that. If there's some gaps, we can augment with our own best practices. This is something which we have built as the Code Foundational Model. We'll get into that. And then using AI, we should be able to get their code repository, run it through checks against their own standards, and do a couple of things: generate the documentation, do a code review, and give an overall quality rating of where this code stands, right? So this is something which has been asked for from many customers, and I'll quickly walk you through how we are delivering to that. So this would be the only front end they will need. Essentially, just ask whether you're a technical person or a business process expert or analyst or some other role, and what is it that we are trying to achieve. We just need the documentation. Sometimes people might want to understand the code, or in preparation for changes, they for S4HANA or some other project, they might need to get to the code. So if we run this and it says paste your code, let me walk you through what I mean here. So going to my SAP, this is ECC, but it works for both ECC and S4. So typically I have code here, ZE. I think this is the one, display. Pretty simple code, I'm picking up for a starter, which is get this code, and we can paste it here. That's it. That's all the user needs to do. It runs, gets this code, and then they typically organizations, they will have their documents, right? Naming conventions, they want to generate a technical spec like this, which has all these elements, overview, scope, what's input, what's output, etc. And then they, to support all of this development, they might have coding standards, naming conventions, and coding checklists. So just to make sure that coding is as per standards and follows the best practices from SAP. So we have fed all of this in the background to something which we call as our Code Foundational Model. It is going to pick this code and run it through all of these checks. So when I submit this, it picks up this code basically for this persona and is just working to create the documentation and a few other things. So to dive deeper into what's going on underneath, here's what goes on. Your SAP ECC or HANA, S4 HANA system. Basically, it is going and running the code catalog through some AI-driven checks. This is central to it, which is our Code Foundational Model, which helps to connect the dots between your SAP, your documentation process, code review checklist, and generate the documentation. So if I go back, here's what it has generated. So it went through this code and worked on the technical spec document. It tells me it is reading from this S-flight table and generating the different sections for the document. Now this can be easily copy pasted into your Word or whatever repository, or it can be downloaded. The second part it does is code review and suggestions. So it is acting like your code quality checker and reviewing with the coding standards. It found out use specific fields instead of select star, uses of field symbols should be checked, and then lastly it gives a quality rating for your overall technical object. So that kind of gives us a picture if it is too bad, something which we or is it something which is perfect. 4 to 5 probably is what we are aiming for, but 3 is okay. Anything below 3 might need a review. So this helps your technical team to prioritize. Now at the second level, you might say, hey, this was too simple. So let's see if we can get to something more complicated. And what I did was I picked one of SAP's core function modules just to demo, what it goes through. And I picked up this one. It's a complicated one where dynamically it goes and reads whatever table or view we pass on and gets the data, right? So this is SAP standard. Again, to do a review of this, usually you will not be reviewing SAP's object, but you might say, hey, I want to understand this for my next project. So I'll go ahead, copy paste this. Let's say, for this one, now I want to understand this slightly better, what's going on here. So I'll paste this function module, the code here, and do a submit. Essentially, it is again going and reviewing against your checklist. And for this persona, business process expert, it goes in and runs through all of these documentation and coding standards checks. So if I go here, it has run through those checks and it reviewed, it created even a technical document for this. This obviously is much more complicated and exhaustive. So, it has identified what's the program logic. It has also given some code review and suggestions in case you're using it for data extraction. And lastly, again, it has given a quality rating with some minor improvements suggested in SQL. So basically what it does is, your piece of code, it would go ahead and run through your own checks of your dev process and give you both the technical document, code improvement suggestions, as well as prioritization, how much of review is needed. Now, you might ask, doing this one by one is fine, but how do we do? We have thousands of objects. But what is provided for those cases is we have a utility which would go ahead and download en masse, objects to a repository. So you can go with either author or function groups or programs and download this en masse. What it does is recursively, it would go and look at not only your top program, but also what are the includes, what are the dictionary elements, screens, all of this to download. And then we can run the checks in a batch. So that's what we mean by this would be agile sprints, where we come in. You would have your defined standards, or we can help augment, and then every month or whatever frequency you decide, we can run through this health checks. All of this is based on USB for SAP to extract not only data, but this time we are extracting code and then running Agentic-AI checks for generating the documents, for giving the code review, as well as quality rating. All right, I hope you find this useful.